fine, honestly. I'm sure.
Crowdcast makes us all go crazy anyway. That it's a funny thing. Right, I think it's working. Yes, good.
Okay, cool.
I'm going to monitor this because I'm not convinced my camera's working today. I always have a tech issue. There's always some fun. So today it's camera. Anyway, we'll see how we get on. Matt, thank you very much for joining.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
We were just saying before, I had that funny moment this morning when I realised that I thought I really knew you, and then I realised I've never actually met you. But we've exchanged messages, we keep on like sharing each other's stuff, and it's one of those sort of things that over the last couple of years it's an online thing.
Absolutely, yeah, and I think that as we were saying, I mean, I think that's people now have kind of firm friendships and relationships with people they've only ever met in 2 dimensions. It would have been unthinkable, wouldn't it, a couple of years back?
It's funny. I like it. And one day you meet and then you wonder, like, is that going to be a disaster?
Yeah, I do that, and people have this terrible look of disappointment, when you were lit properly, Matt, it was much better and I could put you on mute.
That's it. Yeah, exactly. Like I could be doing other things and all that. Yeah, exactly. Can't do that in real life. Brilliant. Well, Matt, please tell people listening a little bit about you before we get stuck into this Rethink today, which I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm Matt. Lovely to be here with you this afternoon. I would be, I suppose, loosely described as an executive coach or a kind of leadership coach. I do a lot of work one-to-one with people and coaching. But what I've always been mostly interested in, Eleanor, which I think we'll get into today, is the idea of the so-called internal coach, where it's something perhaps in a workplace or within an organization that leaders and managers do. So coaching as an approach as opposed to an activity, really. And a lot of that goes back to my own corporate experience, which was a little while ago now, but I worked in retail banking and worked for some wonderful managers, worked for some terrible managers. And it would be an oversimplification to say the good ones were coaches and the poor ones weren't, But when I first started getting into coaching in the mid-90s, it was offering some explanation of that. I think there's always been people who are the world's natural coaches. And for whom, I might explain some of my stuff and they'd go, well, duh, as my daughter would say, isn't that the way that everyone goes about the business of kind of working with people? But no, of course it isn't, and there are some people out there in some very prominent positions who are the antithesis of the coaching approach. And, we're seeing some of the problems that causes. So that's what I think about, so sometimes it's the micro of that, working with the individual. Other times it's the macro, it's the kind of coaching as culture. But I think it's something that probably can be rethought, and especially if we expand that to include the proliferation of external coaches. You can have a coach for this, that, and the other. Anything that you want to change has gone berserk, possibly because of COVID and everything else. So some of the rethinking there, I think, is around, well, what exactly do we mean by coaching, and how do we ensure that people don't get ripped off, frankly, because some of that goes on as well. So there's a potpourri immediately of
oh my God, how long have we got?
Ideas that go through my head.
Oh, right. My God, where do we start? Right. I love all this. So number one, I think you're right. This whole exploration of what the word coach means to someone, let alone the skill of coaching, because you're right. There's a title coach, there's a skill of coaching, and what does that look like for people? And then, yes, as you say, how people are using it, how people are connecting with it. And that's kind of where our title came from. Coaching isn't just when it goes wrong. We could start there, I guess, because I think at the moment it feels like, especially a lot of maybe marketing of coaches always draws on the wrong. You know, oh, you're feeling stuck, you're feeling awful, you're feeling this. I can help you to get to a place. And it's like, you know, the coach therefore takes someone on a journey. Let's start there. But yeah, there's so many places we can go here. I'm loving this. And this is what it's about. And if there's people listening live, please chat away with us.
Absolutely. I'd love that.
I'm not sure if there is, I can't see, but we'll certainly catch your chats if you put stuff in there. But yeah, let's start there. So it's not about, oh my goodness, my whole life is going wrong, I need a coach.
Well, you know, if your whole life is going wrong, I dare say a coach would help. But why limit it to that? You know, now let's get the cheesiest cliche of all out of the way first. You know, if we look at the world of sport, which for many people is the sort of origin, I suppose, of the coaching approach, it isn't necessarily, but it's a useful place to start. Yeah, there's some pretty great performers out there. I was watching Nadal the other week. You know, he became the greatest male tennis player, certainly, you know, in terms of the stats and things. I don't know a lot about tennis, but what I did observe in the corner was his coach.
Yeah.
Now, here is a guy who, by any stretch, you know, things are going quite well in terms of his discipline. But the idea of him or anyone, you know, who is a top performer in that kind of context, operating without a coach is almost unheard of. I mean, sometimes they have gaps, don't they, when they change from working with one to some other. But generally speaking, working with a coach is seen as intrinsic to getting to and maintaining the highest performance that they can in their particular thing. Coaching in life, coaching in work, certainly, which is, I suppose, you know, my kind of natural habitat, isn't like that, Eleanor. It's remedial. It's something that is reached for at the point something has gone wrong. And therefore, I think we limit the potential for this way of communicating, this way of dealing with people that we call coaching. We limit its ability to help if we only ever see it as remedial.
That's a great challenge. And also then comes stigma with, and I think that is definitely changing for sure.
Yeah.
But there probably was a bit of stigma, like, oh God, I've got a coach because I'm working through something. It's like, oh my God, what do you need that for? You know, years ago, it might have been that in a corporate environment, it might have been a bit of stigma around that.
In the corporate environment, I can tell you for sure, in my experience, it was absolutely the case. You know, why would I want special lessons kind of thing? You know, and there are, I think, usually a lot of cultural layers going on with that as well. You know, that the workplace might have the type of culture that's very competitive, dare I say, quite alpha male, you know, if that's not unfair, where it's, you know, achievement, and anything that's a chink in the armor is to just be suppressed. So coaching was almost seen as punishment.
Yeah, interesting.
I remember an anecdote. Somebody I was working with. This was in a sales type environment, although that's not necessarily of any consequence. And this guy was a proven salesperson, you know, hit their numbers and had all the ticks in the boxes, arrived in a new employer, so new setup, you know, not ideal in terms of their patch and the kind of lucrative customer base that they need, and started to really struggle, and had one of these kind of quarterly reviews or whatever that was set up with their sales manager. And the sales manager said to my friend, well, look, you know, if things don't improve, then we're going to have to put, I think they call it like a PIP, performance improvement plan, or something along those lines. Yeah. Oh dear, you know, my friend said, and what will that involve? Well, if you go on the performance improvement plan, we'll have to sit you down and we'll have to do some retraining. You know, we might think about your patch and whether that might needs to change. And we've got somebody here in the business, you know, that could do you some coaching. And my friend said, well, great, you know, why haven't I had that before, and can I have it now, please? You know, so it's like all this stuff was going to be unlocked at the point they were performing badly enough to unlock it. I mean, as I hear myself saying this is absurd, isn't it? You know, if that's available to people, let's make it available all the time.
Yeah. Just think what it could be doing if you had that kind of challenge and that space to explore what's going on. You could be overperforming.
Yeah, and I know in your world as well, which I see kind of overlaps with career coaching and things, which is something I've been involved in on and off down the years. Again, so much stuff gets unlocked, doesn't it, and made available to people at the point the business is having such a torrid time that some people have got to exit. Well, maybe if we could have made some of that kind of support available earlier on in the business cycle, I don't know, you know more about this than I do, but maybe then the business wouldn't have had such a torrid time, and maybe people wouldn't have had to exit the business.
Yeah.
I don't know. So I think that I'm blethering here, and forgive me, but I think we keep coaching kind of locked up.
Yeah.
Well, we shouldn't. Let's just have it all.
I think it's so interesting. It does feel like it's two worlds, and I certainly have a foot in both worlds. I'm still half in corporate with contracts I do, or freelance work, or project, or whatever we're doing, or I'm doing, and then obviously in this kind of self-employment world, or entrepreneur, or whatever world you want to be, you're doing. Where actually it feels like it's now a status thing to have a coach. Every coach has got to have a coach, and please have like the best of the best coach. You can't have the coach that your coach has. You've got to have the coach that your coach has. Oh my God. So there's like two different worlds now that I'm in, where one side is like, oh, what you got a coach for? Are you all right? And the other side is like, oh my God, I've got like the best coach of the coach of the coach. So this is a mind explosion sometimes.
Yeah, and I agree, but it's sort of coach as it's coach as status symbol, isn't it? It's coach as box ticked. It's coach as probably looks good on my Instagram profile. I've got one of these things, and yes, I suppose I'm bound to argue that coaching is a great thing, but neither is it a panacea. It's not going to cure everything just because you have one. I remember some years ago working with a personal trainer, and this girl was explaining to me that some people believe that the result is achieved at the point that they write the checks. I've hired my personal trainer. Why haven't I lost 3 stone?
Yeah, I love that.
Why am I still unable to finish a half marathon? You got to do the work, you've got to do the heavy lifting. So simply acquiring a high profile coach is not enough to guarantee that you're going to make the change that you want to make. There'll be, metaphorically speaking, press ups to do, training to have to do, change that ultimately the individual themselves needs to make. Of course, a good coach can help, but not if it's just some sort of superficial tick in the box.
Yeah, interesting. I think there's something that could be learned from the kind of that self-employment or starting a business, and you're in a coaching community. If it's run really well, I've learned lots there that I think, God, this could work really well in corporate, and I'm certainly playing with that in the the door space, where we bring some of that thinking over, because that's where I see real connection and sharing that isn't always experienced in corporate, because you still got this kind of competitive element, or people are a little bit worried about, God, if I open up and show something, then people are going to think I'm not good enough to do that. There's still a lot of that in corporate, I think, or in certainly in organizations.
Yeah, I agree.
But then again, you look on the other side, and there's people who are starting businesses, and they're in these communities, and they're literally going to their coach, I have no idea what I'm doing. Can someone help? And this kind of blows my mind as well, because it's got now these two sort of parallel universes going on. But there's something in the middle, isn't there, that can then start creating this amazing coaching experience that everybody can then access depending on what they need from it.
Well, that's right. I mean, I think in the corporate world, in the business world, there is this, the elephant in the room is the cost of this stuff, isn't it? So if I'm going to work with a coach for whatever reason, well, okay, somebody's got to find some budget and pay for that. Now, I think the price point of external coaching is reducing, because a lot of stuff now is facilitated online.
Yeah.
And there are some really great tools now that do a lot of the action planning and monitoring metrics and all of that, can be divorced from the actual one-to-one coaching conversation, which is great, because it means that coaches can deploy their time more wisely. But there is that cost element, of course. But again, I come back to, well, if coaching is seen not so much as activity, but seen as approach, is seen as way of dealing with each other, is seen as a way of communicating, well, then that leads, doesn't it, quite naturally to the idea of peer coaching, buddy coaching, call it what you will, but we can coach.
Yeah, that's a good it's a really good point you made about the cost and luxury item. That was actually in my notes this morning, and I was thinking, what things can I poke at? Because this is such a good topic. I was thinking, I think I've experienced in corporate, certainly coaching is a bit of a luxury item that only some people can get access to, like what we're talking about, unless, as you've described it, like something's going very wrong, and then is it a coach or is it extra training or something? And there's not a lot in the middle. But yeah, what are you seeing? Are you seeing any shift in that there's different approaches coming in?
I think it's moving down the hierarchy. It's not as bad as when I first started, when I think, again, probably because of a combination of what you're saying. One, that it cost prohibitive at that time. I'm going back 10, 15 years. And also to protect the status of those higher up the food chain that were getting coaching. It kind of got stuck at what we now might think of as a C-suite. So I do see it coming down, but in my experience, at least, it's far from universal. And certainly lower down the hierarchy, it does tend, again, in my experience, others on tuning into this may see it through quite a different lens. But in my experience, that's when you get lower down, it really is, well, it's a remedy. It's coaching to fix something rather than to sustain or to develop. And therefore, it's quite short term as well. So coach, come in, fix something, and then thank you very much. Off you go. We've got your number if they sort of fall over again, in a few months' time. So I see that phenomenon at play. And I think the other thing is, some of the phone calls I get are, can you come in and fix this guy because we've largely given up? So, and I'm, through bitter experience, kind of alert to some of these sorts of assignments. Try and avoid them, actually, oftentimes, because coaching as vicarious management, get the coach in because nobody can deal with this sort of crazy character. For the coach, I think is usually asking for disaster. That doesn't work, because what does work is when the coach and the coachee or the client, and the sponsoring, the person who's maybe supporting it or paying a check, where they're in alignment and everyone wants it, everyone knows how we would gauge it as a success, that works. People giving up on some of their employees or saying we better get a coach in before this goes to tribunal, so at least we can say we tried. I mean, that's horrific. That really doesn't work.
Gosh, yeah, that's such a good point. Good watch out there. And I guess that is what happens, whether it's actually worded like that or it's even more subtle, which is even more frightening. But
I think so.
That's what experience helps with, though. And I think that's one of the things that if you are thinking about getting a coach and you're maybe instigating it, it is about looking for someone who you can trust is going to help you with what you want from it.
Yeah.
And as you said, in that scenario, that person isn't probably necessarily saying that's what they want. You have to have that want to be successful coachee, don't you? So that scenario, you probably wouldn't have that. So it would be very tough to kind of try and get.
And so I think what people like me and most others that are coaching commercially do is the old chemistry call, so-called, where you have some time with that individual to say, look, I might not be the right person for you. You might not be the right person for me. Before we, dare I say, open the door and walk through it, let's check that out. And there's been a few. It doesn't happen to me often, I'm glad to say, but there's definitely been a few where you think, well, if I'm honest about this here, attractive assignment though this might be, I'm not right for them. I don't think I'm the right person. Or sometimes they don't need a coach. What they need is a consultant. Now, this gets us into some all sorts of semantics, but if what the person needs is just some input, someone to tell them what to do and how to do it, well, that's not really coaching. It's often parceled up that way because, as we said earlier on in the conversation, coaching now is this kind of de rigueur thing that's become almost a meaningless term.
Yeah. Interesting.
But consulting and coaching are different. Advising and coaching are different. Mentoring and coaching are different.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. When I ran the graduate program at Vodafone, we did a big mentoring program. And that was when I first did lots of research, because we used to get the mentors in a room and try and help them be great mentors, which at the time, it was really funny because I felt really uncomfortable, because I was like, how do you really need to be told how to be a great mentor? But oh my goodness, people were so confused by mentoring, coaching, just giving your advice, folding your arms and going, well, this is what I do, and it's like, oh God. And I didn't realize, and so we worked through it and we did some great work. The mentors were brilliant and they really shared their experiences of, like being a great mentor. And then if coaching was actually more preferable. So yeah, you're right. And the scary thing I'm seeing in the sort of B2C world is actually the other side, which is like coaching, but actually it's counseling. And I think that's terrifying. So one of the things when I first started coaching years ago, people who lost their job just because I was writing about it, I suddenly started thinking, oh my God, these people need a counselor. Like this is not what I'm doing here. And I started to get really uncomfortable with it all. And it kind of made me freeze a little bit while I worked through it. It helped my writing because I was really understanding where people were at. And this is where the book came out of. But I just thought, oh my God, no. They need counseling. And I think that's terrifying because I do see a lot of, it's headlines, this sort of Instagram. Are you suffering from depression? Come on, my God. I'm like, oh my God, that's terrifying.
Yeah, it is.
What's your thoughts on all this? Because you must be sitting there as a veteran coach. I'm going to call you veteran. Is that offensive?
We'll edit it out afterwards. Don't worry about it. Yeah.
But you're watching this kind of world that you've been in going, what's going on?
Yeah, there are a lot of shysters out there. There really are. And I don't know. Like you, I share some real worries with that because certainly when I've done coaching skills training, so a room full of managers or leaders, and I'm teaching them the basics, I suppose. It doesn't have to be so sophisticated, but even then, thinking, look, let's just talk about some signs that maybe the coaching is going into something else. And normally, if there's an emotional component beginning to bubble to the surface, and I think that sometimes coaching might be the first thing that starts releasing some of that. So in some ways, this is a good thing. And I'll say to people, if the people that you coach are giving you some real emotional stuff, at some level you must have done a brilliant job of creating a relationship of trust, because I don't suppose they would do that if they didn't feel comfortable. But know your own limitations, and have an understanding. If you're doing it in an organization, for example, and I have an understanding of the welfare or the wellness policy such that you know when and how to hand somebody off to someone who's got specialist skills, because I certainly wouldn't want to go dabbling around in the arena that's really the stuff of counseling and therapy, because you're going to be able to help people with these things. I think that skillful coaching probably won't do any harm, but there are definitely, a boundary at which point somebody needs some properly qualified help.
Yeah, I guess that's really why you should really work on your coaching. If you want to be a coach, I think you really need to work on those signs. Are brilliant. Yeah, work on the signs that actually it's not what you're there to deliver. Work on your boundaries and be very clear on what you're working with and how you work.
Yeah, I agree.
But know what to do if it strays, because that sounds simple, but it isn't. I've been in that situation, just like it unfolding and me thinking, oh my God, I don't know how to handle this. and I just got straight, off the call and, text someone who's a brilliant coach and we're like, God, can you just talk me through? I need to revisit this as a skill set. So yeah, it's really, I think that's quite an important thing that then reassures people they're in the right place, because they're obviously wanting help or needing help. So
yeah, I agree. And you must see this, I imagine, in your work all the time, because if somebody has come to the end of a period of employment, there's obviously a kind of a circumstantial element to that, because they need to think about applying for something else or doing whatever they need to do. But the emotional component around that is huge, isn't it? I mean, I've been made redundant in my time, and remember those two things kind of going on at the same time. And it's important, I think, to get some support with both, isn't it?
Yeah, and that is, and sometimes it's interesting because sometimes companies, if we're doing a contract, will say, can you provide counselling as part of the package? Mm-hmm. And that's always been a dilemma. So there was one package I did and I got a professional counsellor in, but I still felt really kind of a bit weird about it, thinking, is it that bad? Like, what are you doing to these people? Like, you don't even know what's going on yet. So it was a bit odd. A couple of people used it, but actually once, we obviously talked through shock and just that gentle side of becoming a little bit, low, but definitely not in a counselling state. So yeah, really interesting what people think people need as well, and therefore what they're bringing in at certain points in the journey. And sure. That's where another door is. We're now really interested in this space of rethinking for that very reason, because we saw that actually not just redundancy but change, just people going through change at work, and that's obviously what I do from a corporate comms point of view, and do this whole change programs and taking people through it. That in itself is the same sort of trauma often, and yet we don't acknowledge it in that way. That's when you should bring coaches in to really help people to say, all this change around us, the leadership might be getting excited about the North Star or whatever their vision they're talking about, but everyone else is sitting there going, oh my God, what does this mean for me? Oh my, even if they're not losing their job, they might be like, I can't do this. It's not me anymore. Things are changing so rapidly. Oh my God. All of this stuff. That's what
about those that don't leave? Survivor syndrome and all that, so lots of help, and rightly so, often for people through outplacement programs and so on. But ignore at your peril, I suppose, those that are left behind, thinking, well, I've just about made it out this time, but now I'm like permanently frightened.
Yeah, that's
what will be next.
Yeah. So the rethink coaching, love this thing. Don't just think of coaching when it's going wrong. You might be at a moment in time in your career and actually you're feeling quite good and you're thinking, actually, things are going all right. Why would you need a coach?
Well, I think you need a coach for the simple reason that coaching, if we reduce it to its essence, then coaching to me is about helping people learn from their experience.
Yeah.
So if I go back to this idea of like coaching and mentoring, and people might want to fight me over this, because it's a sort of simplistic explanation. But to me, mentoring is about, a wiser person sending some wisdom of theirs into someone else. Coaching is about making apparent, bringing to the surface the wisdom that is in each of us anyway. Coaching is therefore about learning and deriving wisdom from our own experiences, and the coach is a catalyst to help us do that. So that's a useful thing to do, I think, whether things are going well, whether things are going badly, or they're just stable in between, because we all know how quickly the world is changing. What's the old expression? You can never put your foot in the same river twice, can you? So even if you think that things are sort of stable and are just going okay, well, around the corner is the next change that's coming. So let's start having you learning more from that current experience to reinforce some strengths, to begin to apply some attention to maybe weaknesses, or call them whatever you will, so you're bolstering those up so they're in better shape for next time. There's always that self-work to be done, I think, Eleanor, including when things are going really, really well. Why are they going really well? Is that just a happy accident, or could you be paying attention to some things that then you can switch on and activate when you need them, so there isn't just some sort of purple patch that's inexplicable to you and you just kind of ride the wave while you can and hope for the best. Let's start, instead of hoping for the best, let's start unpacking what's going on and find out how you can access your ability when you need it, not just when the planets align,
Love that. I'm just thinking we did once do that as a team when I worked at Virgin. We got in a coach when everything was going fine. And it was a team. So I've gone over my 30 minutes. I said, no, we're going to stick to 30. But I just want to ask you one more thing because it's made me remember team coaching. Because, we did team coaching when it was feeling good, but we had lots on. We were a busy team. And we got a coach in and did stuff. And half the team were probably like, what are you doing? And then the other side were probably loving it. But yeah. Team coaching. When do you bring somebody in to help with your team?
Well, I would go back to our first point, like whenever you want, if you would like that team to sort of fix something or avoid something or develop something. Coaching is about movement, I think, again, Eleanor, at the risk of an oversimplification is we're at point A, we want to get to point B. We would like someone to help us learn what we need to learn in order to make that movement. Now, whether you do that for an individual, which is the orthodoxy, or whether you do it for the team or the group. So to me, the team is like a vertical, the group would be
great point.
But get the people in the room or on the call or whatever and start doing those same things. Start, articulating where we're trying to get to, develop a better understanding of where you start from. Think about what might be ways of bridging that gap, and then start committing to taking some actions to do that and monitor your success and gather back together to realign and all of that good stuff. And some of the people on this webinar will recognize the old GROW model in there, the goal, the reality, options, and will or way forward, because those are invariably 4 steps that we need to take to move either an individual or a group forward.
Yeah, that's such a good point. You remind me as well when transformation programs are always horizontal, and God, how powerful to get coaching to help that team that are trying to come together, but they're all coming from different verticals. And how powerful to get that in, especially if it's like a year transformation program or longer. I've definitely experienced that, and it's
indeed.
valuable.
And if you put another layer of complication around it, which is like a merger or an acquisition or something like that, you've got people with different cultural beliefs coming together and you've got to try and thrash all of that out. Well, coaching becomes a great tool.
Yeah.
And to end up or to move towards that sense of alignment, where you take forward all of the good stuff from previous experiences and sensibly kind of let go of some things that would now hold you back. I mean, how else do people thrash that out? How else do they do it? Well, they start second guessing, don't they? They sort of, in the absence of somebody helping them arrive at those sorts of decisions, they'll just do what feels natural. All of that can be a bit disastrous. Or they start role modeling the wrong people, because you've got leaders saying one thing but doing something rather different, and people defer to what they see, don't they? Not just what's on the poster in the. I'm sounding very cynical here. That's because I'm a veteran, Seeing these things go wrong a lot of times, including in my own experience, and then sort of subsequently doing this sort of work, and you're sometimes spectating upon things that go sadly wrong. Nobody, it's not designed. Nobody sets out, do they, to make a bad transformation program.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes, for me, what's missing is that real understanding of the people component.
Oh, 100%. I've got a talk coming up this year. I'm doing it in 4 or 5 conferences called The Missing Piece, which is exactly that. So I kept thinking, I work on these transformation programs as a comms person, and comms is always usually the blame. So it's like, oh, poor comms, stick more comms out. They're not getting this, stick more comms out. So it's usually kind of in that capacity of a transformational program. But I sort of started digging deeper a couple of years ago into transformational programs and like what's the layers and all the components and deeper change program. And it's fine, but it still feels very top down driven.
Yeah.
And it's still like all these people at the end of it trying to catch everything, all this amazing thought leadership and all this, all the money goes to the top, how do we help leaders through change and all this? And then they just fire all their balls at these people trying to catch it all. And you're right, they're the ones that need the coaching space to go, right, hang on a minute, where am I at?
Yeah.
How can I help myself deal with this? No one's helping them. So of course they're going to just like let the ball drop. They're going to just try and come to the meetings with their arms folded going, this is a load of rubbish. Of course they are, because they're scared and no one's helping them to see it different. Yeah. So yeah.
I agree completely. I think, you test your transformation program at the point your business meets its customers, don't you? That's what you see.
Yeah.
That sort of intersection between the organization and its outside world. That's where you see whether the changes taking place or not.
Oh, I love that. I've got a visual. I wish I could draw. I can just about draw.
You not got one of those magic sort of digital pens or something you could?
Oh God, I'd love that. I've always been a scribbler and a doodler, but that magic moment of like, how do you know when your transformation is going well? Customer, employee serving customer, get it, and bring it alive, and it all exactly. That's it. Yeah. So powerful. All right, I'm going to start. I nearly got there, 36, but I had to explore that bit because it's just another kind of challenge on coaching, isn't it? It's just rethink on coaching. Yeah. Don't just dismiss it as a thing you have to go to if it's all going wrong. There's so much opportunity in there. It's finding the right person who can deliver that for you, and it's understanding like what you want, as you say.
That's beautifully summarized. The rethought, I think, is a way of coaching as activity. Does only so much good. Let's move into coaching as. Wouldn't it be great if we didn't even need the word anymore? Because if it became so kind of intrinsic to just how we are with people, and coaching was just some scaffolding that we needed for a few decades just to get us to that point. That, I guess, would be wonderful.
Oh, amazing. God, that is a massive rethink to end on. Oh my God. I feel like I need to start this all again now. What if we made coaching think? I'm not.
Well, you can have me back on. I'll come and chat to you some more about that.
Yeah. What if we eliminate coaching? Wow. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
I like, as I say, these thought-provoking things that we can't just settle. We can't just know what we think we know. We've got to keep poking and searching and thinking beyond what we think we know. So thank you so much, Matt. It's been great to chat and finally chat face to face, but not meet yet. That's the next phase at some point.
Well, we will do that. We will do that when we can.
Thank you. Take care.
Yeah. Speak to you again. Bye-bye. Bye.